By now, the story is known to all. Most of it is mostly known to all. So, long story cut short, the US prosecutors have indicted businessman Gautam Adani, his nephew Sagar Adani, and 6 others for allegedly indulging in a massive bribery scheme to a tune of more than 2,000 crore rupees had been paid to Indian government officials allegedly in order to secure solar power contract. They have all been charged under Foreign Corruption Prevention Act. Arrest warrants have been issued for Gautam Adani, Sagar Adani and others as per the Reuters report. So if you're wondering what is the US government doing in the scheme of investigation, how is US involved and why is United States after an Indian Gujarati? Well, for that we have to decode the Adani saga. Here's decoding the Gautam Adani indictment, and for that we have to decode a very complex web of alleged fraud. There is something called Solar Energy Corporation of India, SECI, a Government of India enterprise, and as the name suggests, the basic task of this Government of India enterprise is to work on solar power. Between December 2019 and July 2022, SECI gave letter of awards to Azure Power and Adani Green Energy Limited for solar power worth 4 gigawatt and 8 gigawatt respectively, which means Azure Power was meant to provide 4 gigawatt of solar energy and Adani Green Energy Limited was meant to provide 8 gigawatt of solar energy to SECI. So what is the job of SECI? SECI won't sit on 12 gigawatt of solar power and scream shock laga, shock laga, shock laga, which means they have to sell 12 gigawatt of solar power to the takers, the rightful takers. In context of India would be state power distribution companies. But here's a big catch. As per the letter of awards and equally the amended letter of awards, the rate that was fixed for procurement of solar power was actually a fixed rate, which means SECI had to pay a fixed rate of money to Azure Power and Adani Green Energy Limited for procurement of the solar power. Now, if you're buying something at a certain rate, you would want to sell that to others at either the same rate or with a profit margin. Most of the state power distribution companies were reluctant to buy solar power at that very rate. It was certainly very high. And here comes the big khela, or rather the alleged khela. According to the US prosecutors, the indictment report, Gautam Adani's Adani Green Energy Limited and Azure Power had allegedly indulged in massive bribery scheme, which means Gautam Adani at times had personally brokered deals between the state government. For a purchase-sale agreement to be signed between SECI and the state power distribution company. That's what the US prosecutors are alleging, for which Gautam Adani and his associates had paid bribes more than 2,000 crore rupees to Indian government officials. One particular foreign official who was actually dealing the case of Andhra Pradesh had taken more than 1,700 crore rupees. I repeat, more than 1,700 crore rupees, for which eventually Andhra Pradesh State Power Distribution Company had signed a purchase-sale agreement with SECI for 7 gigawatt of solar power. I repeat, the solar power that Adani Green Energy was selling to SECI or Azure Power was selling to SECI. The same solar energy was this time meant to be bought by Andhra Pradesh Power Distribution Company, at least 7 gigawatt of it. Incidentally, this only came after Gautam Adani had a personal meeting with then Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister YSR Jagan Reddy. Which are the other states involved? Orissa, Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu, and one union territory, that is Jammu and Kashmir. Here's a quick timeline. On 22nd of July 2021, purchase sale agreement deal was signed between SECI and Orissa Discom, that is Gridco, GRIDCO, for 500 megawatt of solar energy. On 12th of August 2021, PSA was signed between SECI and Chhattisgarh's CSPDCL for 300 megawatt of solar energy. On 16th of September 2021, PSA was signed between SECI and Tamil Nadu State Power Distribution Company, that is Tamil Nadu Generation and Distribution Corporation Limited, for 1000 megawatt of solar energy. On February 10, 2022, SECI had inked a PSA deal with Jammu Kashmir's Discom for 100 megawatt of solar energy. Now, the allegations are that at these states and union territory, these deals were eventually arrived at only after hundreds and hundreds of crores of rupees had been paid as bribes to state government officials or Indian government officials, to be on the safer side, in order to secure these deals. Again, I ask, if you're wondering how is US involved in the scheme of investigation, here's the answer. So Gautam Adani's Adani Green Energy Limited had been working along with Azure Power. Azure Power is a listed company in New York Stock Exchange. That apart, Adani Green and subsidiaries had obtained $2 billion denominated bank loans from international financial institutions and US assets-based management companies. Basically, they have collected money, they have borrowed money from financial institutions based out of US. They had also offered $1 billion in securities underwritten by international financial institutions. They are also alleged to have falsely touted the company's compliance with anti-bribery principles and laws while issuing $750 million of bond offering. While Adani Group had been generating investment through US investors, they had falsely given the declaration that they were doing every fair practice possible and not indulging in anything wrong. But as per US prosecutors, while the declaration was given to US investors and funds had been generated from the soil of US, Adani Group, or rather Adani Green Energy Limited and Azure Power, had allegedly indulged in bribery scheme in order to secure the same solar power contracts which they were highlighting in US, market them in US to solicit more investment from US investors. So what are the 5 big charges? Conspiracy to commit bribery, which is a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. Allegation is Gautam Adani and associates conspired to pay bribes to Indian government officials to secure power purchase agreements and facilitate contracts between SECI and Indian state electricity distribution companies. Second, conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice. Allegation is Adani and co-conspirators obstructed US government investigations by destroying documents, suppressing communications, and providing false information. There are evidences once again. Efforts to conceal the bribery scheme during FBI, SEC and grand jury investigations, and that's exactly what is being mentioned in the indictment report. Number 3, the security fraud. Allegation is Adani had participated in making false and misleading statements to investors about the Indian energy company's anti-bribery practices while raising funds from US-based investors. There is also a wire fraud, and that's charge number 4. Adani and his associates used the US financial system, including interstate and international wire communications to further the fraudulent schemes. There are evidences, and as per the indictment, use of US wires to solicit investments, secure loans, move funds in connection with the bribery and fund schemes are there with the agencies. We also spoke with senior journalist Mr. Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, one who had been working relentlessly as far as this investigation is concerned, one of those very few individuals in the country against who Gautam Adani and his lawyers have also filed a defamation. Sir, first thing first, thank you for your time. How do you see this indictment happening in US?
It's very, very significant. It's very, very important. This saga is not new. It started a long time ago. It started sometime in 2015 where people started questioning about how this particular business group, which nobody had heard of Mr. Gautam Adani 25, 30 years ago, and how he was just he dropped out of college. He started, he had this diamond business in Mumbai's Jhaveri Bazaar. His family had a small plastics factory. They were making, among other products, cling films. And from there to become one of the world's men by 2023, one of India's richest men, one of Asia's richest men, is an amazing story. Some of us were working on a book on the subject. And Tamal, this whole notion of what is investigative journalism, there are some misnomers. People are not sure exactly. A lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about how investigative journalists work. A lot of the information that was put out had come from people within the government, people within government bodies. And their conscience was obviously pricked, and they felt that this information should enter the public domain, so they choose journalists, including journalists like me. But even after you have had that information, after you've verified that information, after you've authenticated that information, it's not easy to find people to publish you. You should know that I'm the only citizen of India against whom Mr. Adani's lawyers have instituted 6 cases of defamation that I'm currently fighting in different courts of law. 5 are in Gujarat, 1 is in Rajasthan. I happen to be right now in Bhuj, in Gujarat, not very far from where Mundra is located, and that is India's biggest special economic zone. That is the base of Mr. Gautam Adani. I also happen to be the only Indian journalist who's been named in the first report of Hindenburg Research. That was January of 2023. But I'll tell you why I feel vindicated. Because this time, this is bigger than Hindenburg Research. You have agencies of the government of the United States. Yes, it's the outgoing government headed by Joe Biden. Yes, in January, Donald Trump will become the president of the US. But as of now, this indictment has come from the Department of Justice, based on investigations by FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. There is another set of indictments that have come from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. So it's not one short seller saying, something's wrong or something's fishy and somebody's trying to pull a con. These are government bodies. And you have a warrant of arrest that has been issued against Mr. Gautam Adani. It was on the 17th of March 2023 that Mr. Gautam Adani's nephew, Sagar Adani, he was the FBI agents, the special agents of the FBI. They interrogated him. They took into custody his devices. They served him what is called a grand jury subpoena. A subpoena is like a summons to appear before a court of law. And Mr. Gautam Adani, based on what they found of his mobile phone, he had himself photographed each and every page of the search warrant and the subpoena. Now, more than a year and a half years later, this indictment has come, this arrest warrant has come. In this period, there was funds raised by Adani entity in March 2024. $109 million US were raised. These are senior secured notes. This is a joint venture with Adani has been is associated. What is the allegation? The allegation is that you did not inform investors in the US, in India. You allegedly violated the provisions of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. Okay, so you therefore allegedly, there was wire fraud, there was bribery, there was corruption, and the allegations were that you bribed officials in 5 different state governments to obtain solar energy contracts, and the fine is a staggering amount of money, 250 million US dollars, that works out to over 2,000 crore rupees. We don't know what will happen. We really don't know what will happen. How this warrant of arrest will be executed? Will there be a proposal for an extradition? Will there be going through Interpol or something else? I don't know. All I know that soon after Mr. Donald Trump won the American presidential election, Mr. Gautam Adani announced on Twitter, now known as X, owned by Mr. Elon Musk, who's very close to Mr. Donald Trump, that he assured people that he would be investing not anything less than 10 billion US dollars in various projects in America, in the United States of America, on developing its energy facilities and its energy infrastructure facilities. Now, Mr. Trump is formally going to assume the post of President of the United States in January. What happens between now and January? What happens after that? I cannot speculate. I really don't know what will happen. But all I can say, the present revelations are huge. They're bigger than Hindenburg Research. Its report, the first report was in, as I told you, in January 2023. The second report about the SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India chairperson, Madhavi Puri Butch, came in August. But what I'm saying is that this is already huge. It's going to have an impact on what I say, the political economy of India. The stocks of the Adani Group collapsed. The proportion by which the different stocks of the Adani Group fell varied from 7.3% to 22% on the National Stock Exchange. Now, we know that there's been a major investor in the Adani Group, bailed the Adani Group out after the Hindenburg Research, that is GQG, headed by Mr. Rajiv Jain. They also have said their stocks have collapsed. And we also know that Mr. Adani had been planning an issue of bonds worth 600 million US dollars, and it has now said that he will not be issuing that bond. So that's on the stock market side. What will happen to the economy? That's a difficult question. What happens to all these projects, the ports, the airports, the electricity distribution contracts, the electricity production contracts, not to mention the solar energy contracts? What will SEBI do? You see, the US government has said that you have allegedly violated the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. Now, if you have violated, if you have allegedly cheated and defrauded American investors, what happens to India's investors? Will SEBI act? We have been told that the Securities and Exchange Board of India has issued a show cause notice. We don't know what is contained in that show cause notice. But simply put, if you believe the indictment of the US, from the US, then Mr. Adani lied or did not tell the full truth to SEBI. Now, the arrest warrant, which was dated a month ago, has been now disclosed. What will happen? What is a subpoena? You're supposed to appear in court. In this case, if the subpoena was issued on Mr. Sagar Adani, has he appeared? Has he not appeared?
I want to understand this now that the Adani Group, they
I just
issued a
finished it.
statement saying that they would be fighting this legally and that these are mere charges, that they are not convicted. These charges are to be proven, and these charges, until proven, they are not guilty, they are innocent. How do you react to this statement coming in from Adani?
I have nothing to comment on what Mr. Adani's statement is. He's correct. He's legally correct. These are allegations, but these are not allegations but a US-based short seller. It's not allegations by a journalist. It is the allegations made by a government agency, the Department of Justice, based on investigations by the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I mean, what Rahul Gandhi said at a press conference is that if you can arrest a chief minister like Hemant Soren, then why don't you arrest Mr. Gautam Adani?
जो इन्वेस्टिगेटिव एजेंसीज हैं, जो 2 मिनट में झारखंड के चीफ मिनिस्टर को अरेस्ट कर देती हैं, दूसरों को अरेस्ट कर देती हैं, दिल्ली के चीफ मिनिस्टर को अरेस्ट कर देती हैं, हम चाहते हैं कि वो अपना काम करें, अदानी जी को अरेस्ट करें, इंटेरोगेट करें और जहां भी करप्शन हुआ है कार्रवाई करें.
Well, did you see his tweet, sir? If I can just take you through the tweet of Mr. Gautam Adani, what he said about Donald Trump, I found it very, very surprising when he says, if there is one person on earth who stands as the embodiment of unbreakable tenacity, unshakable grit, relentless determination, and the courage to stay true to its beliefs, it is Donald Trump. Fascinating to see America's democracy empower its people and uphold the nation's founding principles. He actually says this on 6th of November 2024. It is very, very interesting.
I'm surprised that he did not also praise Mr. Narendra Modi in the same breath. If you will remember, our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, roughly 4 years ago, had actually said at a public meeting in Houston, in Texas, ab ki baar Trump Sarkar. Well, Mr. Modi was just 4 years late. That's all. What Mr. Modi said 4 years ago has become true now.
BJP is saying, and I want to attribute it to them. They are saying that, what is the timing? In January, Mr. Donald Trump is President Donald Trump, after his swearing, is expected to visit India, and now in the month of November you have this. So, do you find that statement coming in from a political party, acceptable? Can you buy that?
Why is BJP batting for Adani?
मोदी जी भारतीय जनता पार्टी के ऊपर आक्षेप लगाने का प्रयास उनका रहता है. याद करिए जिस प्रकार से एक सेंसेशनलाइज करने का प्रयास उनका रहता है, इस प्रकार से बोलते हैं जैसे पता नहीं पहली बार कोई सुन रहा हो, कितना बड़ा खुलासा हो रहा है. तो ये राहुल जी का एक तरीका है भारतवर्ष के ऊपर हमला करने का और भारत के जो स्ट्रक्चर्स भारत को बचाते हैं उसके ऊपर हमला करने का.
Every time something negative is published about Adani, Mr. Adani not only issues a denial, he wraps himself up in the tricolor, the national flag. Every attack on Adani is perceived to be an attack on India, and its spokespersons have the flag of India behind them as they deny them. But why are we conflating the interests of Mr. Adani with that of the country? And secondly, why does it bother the BJP such a lot? Is it because Mr. Adani's proximity to Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, is closer than the proximity of any business person, any oligarch, any tycoon, any capitalist with the political leader, the head of the government, than ever before? We know political parties or political leaders and business tycoons have had a cozy relationship. Sometimes it's an uneasy relationship where Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the father of the nation, was staying in the ashram on the home of Ghanshyam Das Birla. He actually wrote about why he was staying there. He saw Mr. G.D. Birla as a nationalist tycoon, as a nationalist industrialist. It was in his home where on the 30th of January 1948, he was assassinated by Nathuram Godse. We have seen how the Tatas have grown, how the Birlas have grown, how the Ambanis have grown. But I don't think any business person in India has been seen to be as close as Mr. Narendra Modi and Mr. Gautam Adani. I mean, when in 2014, in the Lok Sabha elections, Mr. Modi came to power, he used Mr. Gautam Adani's aircraft to campaign. When he flew from Ahmedabad in May to Delhi, you could see his picture against the Adani's aircraft. Mr. Modi has traveled the country, has traveled the world, and Mr. Adani has accompanied him. And more often than not, Mr. Adani has got lucrative projects. Australia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Israel, Greece, Tanzania, Kenya. Mr. Modi has been promoting Mr. Adani's interests like few prime ministers have. He's promoting one industrialist's interest the most. It's not that he's promoting all of Indian industry, Tatas, Birlas, and Mahindras, and everybody else. Why has he been promoting one person's interest the most? Is this a level playing field? Is this really capitalism? Or are we seeing this as cronyism and oligarchy? I mean, these are questions that have become very important. There are legal cases against Mr. Adani, which are being fought today in Dhaka in Bangladesh, in Colombo in Sri Lanka, in Nairobi in Kenya. So we don't know what will happen. But this kind of proximity. Yeah.
I'm very curious to ask. There are a couple of mentions of anonymous characters in this entire 55, 60 page, filing. Conspirator number 1, conspirator number 2. They have not been named.
Who are they? Good question. How did they get all this information? How did the SEBI chairperson, the Securities and Exchange Board of India chairperson Madhavi Puri Buch, how did her income tax return leak? How did people get to know about it? How did the Congress party find out all her investments, all the big business houses to whom her properties in Mumbai had been leased out to or rented out to? How did all this happen? These whistleblowers. Good question. I wish I knew. I wish I knew who were the whistleblowers. They didn't they didn't give me the document, but somebody did. I mean, how did all this information come out? I mean, were private detectives engaged by somebody? Did somebody in the income tax department leak all this information? I can only speculate, Tamal. I don't know. All I'm saying, I can go back to where I started. Investigative journalists, you, me, anybody, we depend on sources. That information comes to us because somebody wants that information to be put in the public domain. We have to verify, we have to cross-check, we have to authenticate, we have to get that information from the other side before we can put it out in the public domain. And there is a risk involved because you're dealing with one of the richest persons on the planet.
It specifically says that Gautam Adani met with a foreign official in page number 14 in Andhra Pradesh to advance the execution of the power sale agreement between SECL and Andhra Pradesh state. I mean, the foreign official, I'm very curious.
Good question. Please ask the FBI. I don't know. Please ask the Department of Justice how they got all this information.
Well, it's a fact that these are all charges and yet to be proven in the court of law. And that's exactly what is the standpoint of the Adani Group. Yet, the charges leveled in this very indictment are very, very serious in nature. It also in every documents a concerted effort been invested by the alleged conspirators in trying to destroy evidences. Probably that calls for a separate story altogether. But who are these conspirators? Here's a quick rundown of the names mentioned in this very indictment. Gautam Adani, chairman of Adani Green Energy Limited. Sagar Adani, nephew of Gautam Adani, executive director of Adani Green Energy Limited. Vineet Jain, former CEO of Adani Green Energy Limited. Ranjit Gupta, former CEO of Azure Power, that is the US issuer. Rupesh Agarwal, former consultant at Azure Power. Cyril Cabines, who was associated with a Canadian firm CDPQ, former non-executive director of the boards of directors Azure Power. Saurav Agarwal, who was associated with the same Canadian firm, that is CDPQ. Deepak Malhotra was also associated with CDPQ and was also a former non-executive director of the board of directors Azure Power. That apart, very interestingly, there are mentions of 3 specific characters: conspirator number 1, conspirator number 2, and foreign official. While all these characters have been established in this very indictment, but at least in the filing before the court, these 3 characters, conspirator number 1, conspirator number 2, and foreign official, they have not been disclosed. However, it is being clearly mentioned as who this foreign official is or who is conspirator number 1 or who is conspirator number 2. If you're wondering what is this telescope doing right behind me, well, as we wind up this report, all I can say, I wish this telescope could help us find the truth. Sooner the better. Thank you for watching.